Rain poured over the refugee camp, soaking the tattered fabric of makeshift tents and turning the dirt paths into thick, clinging mud. Azarin pulled her cloak tightly around her shoulders, shielding the two small figures pressed against her sides. The fabric was thin, barely keeping out the cold, but it was all she had left. Sia, her youngest, let out a small whimper, her tiny silver eyes peeking up at her through damp strands of pale hair. Vel, older by 2 years, clenched his jaw in a way that broke Oz's heart. He was trying to be strong, trying not to cry. "We'll find something soon," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if the words were for them or for herself. Her people, the Valkyans, had once been powerful. Now they were scattered, survivors of a war that had taken their home, their safety, and, for Ozza, the mate she had once trusted to stand by her side. He had been gone long before the war ended, abandoning her the moment she had become what Valkyan males considered weak, a mother without protection, without a future. She had tried. Every day she had searched for work, for food, for anything to keep her children from fading away in this cruel place. But no one wanted a single mother with 2 mouths to feed. To the other Valkyans in the camp, she was nothing but a burden. Ozza, the camp overseer, an elder with sharp eyes and little patience, had spoken to her that morning. "You need to leave." Her heart had clenched in her chest. I just need more time. I can work." "No one will take you," the elder had said flatly. "Resources are thin. The others have made their decision." And so, with no home, no food, and nowhere left to go, she had wandered the camp with her children, searching for anything. That was when she saw him. A human. He stood near the medical tent, distributing supplies to wounded refugees. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair slightly tousled from the rain, he moved with an ease she had never seen among her people. Humans were rare in these camps, but Ozza had heard stories. They were strange. Unlike other species, they cared for those who were not their own. Something deep inside her, something raw and desperate, pushed her forward. She didn't know what she was expecting. A rejection? A cold dismissal, like all the others? The human turned as she approached, his warm brown eyes meeting hers. For a moment she froze, feeling small beneath his gaze. But then, something unexpected happened. He didn't look away. He didn't sneer, didn't step back, didn't pretend she wasn't there. Instead, his brows furrowed in quiet concern. "Are you all right?" Ozza's throat tightened. The words felt foreign, as if no one had asked her that in years. She swallowed hard. "Please," she whispered. "I need help." His gaze flickered to the 2 small children hiding behind her. His expression softened, his lips pressing into a firm but thoughtful line. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to their level. "Hey there, little ones." Sia clung to Oz's leg, her tiny fingers curling into the fabric of her cloak. Vel, always the more guarded of the 2, studied the human carefully, as if trying to decide whether he could be trusted. The human didn't push. He simply looked back at Ozza. "You're hungry?" She nodded, too ashamed to speak. Without hesitation, he gestured for her to follow him to the medical tent. Inside, it was warm, filled with the scent of sterilized supplies and something faintly metallic, blood, perhaps. But there was also food. Water. "Sit," he said gently, offering a clean blanket. "I'll get something for them." Ozza hesitated. She wasn't used to kindness. It felt foreign, dangerous even, like something she couldn't afford to believe in. But Sia and Vel were already drawn to the food placed in front of them, soft bread, fresh fruit, warm broth. Watching them eat, relief flooded her chest so suddenly she almost forgot how to breathe. The human sat across from her, watching quietly. "You have a name?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Azarin." He nodded. "Roan." His name was simple, human, and yet something about the way he said it made her feel grounded, as if she had stepped onto something solid for the first time in years. "You're alone?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She stiffened. "I can work," she said quickly. I don't expect anything for free. I just need. I didn't ask for that, Roan interrupted gently. I just wanted to know. Ozza swallowed. She had spent so long convincing herself she had to be useful, that if she wasn't strong enough, no one would ever look at her twice. But here was this human, offering food, warmth, without asking for anything in return. Her hands trembled as she clutched the edges of the blanket. No one else would help, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Not the Valkyans. Not the others. No one wants a mother and her burdens. Roan exhaled slowly. That's stupid, he muttered. Oz's head snapped up, startled by the bluntness of his words. Kids aren't burdens, he continued, leaning back in his chair. They're just kids. And you. His gaze met hers, unwavering. You're doing what you have to. That's not weakness. Her breath hitched. No one had ever said that to her before. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. But before she could find the words, Roan stood and stretched. You said you can work? She blinked. Yes. His lips curved slightly. Good. I need a hand around here. Her heart pounded. You mean? Stay. Help me with the clinic. I'll make sure you and your kids are safe. She should have questioned it, should have doubted him. But when she looked into his warm, steady eyes, she found herself believing him. And for the first time in so long, hope flickered in her chest. Azarin barely slept that night. The warmth of the tent, the steady breathing of her children beside her, and the unfamiliar sense of security left her restless. It had been too long since she'd felt anything close to safety. She kept expecting it to be taken away. Morning came too quickly. She woke to the scent of something cooking, simple, but rich. Sia stirred against her side, her small fingers curling into Oz's sleeve. Vel, already half awake, blinked up at her. Do we have to leave? He whispered. The question twisted like a knife in Oz's chest. He had learned, far too young, that kindness never lasted. I don't know, she admitted. Vel didn't answer, just sat up and pulled Sia closer, as if bracing for the worst. Ozza rose carefully, stepping past the sleeping children and out into the open space of the medical tent. Roan stood at a portable cooking station, stirring something over a small heating unit. The scent of oats and something sweet filled the air. He glanced up at her. Morning. Ozza hesitated. You made food. He shrugged. Figured you and the kids could use something warm. Warm. The word settled deep in her chest, curling in a place that had been cold for far too long. She approached slowly, unsure of how to accept something given so freely. I can cook, she said quickly. I don't want to take without. Roan cut her off with a look that was equal parts amused and exasperated. You don't have to prove yourself to me, Ozza. She swallowed. That's not how my people think. Well, he said, handing her a bowl, I'm not your people. Ozza took it hesitantly, her fingers brushing his for the briefest moment. His skin was warm, rough in a way that spoke of years of work, yet his touch was gentle. She pulled back quickly, staring into the bowl instead. The food was simple, oats, a drizzle of fruit paste, but to Ozza it may as well have been a feast. Roan handed her 2 more bowls for the children. They're still asleep? She nodded. Let them rest, he said. They need it. Ozza took a slow breath. You meant what you said? That I can stay? That you'll give me work? Roan met her gaze. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't. She clutched the bowls tighter, fighting the tightness in her throat. I don't know how to help in a place like this, she admitted. I have no medical training. Roan leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. You ever cleaned wounds? She blinked. Of course. Held someone's hand while they were scared? Yes. Helped kids who were hurt? Her heart ached. Too many times. Roan nodded. Sounds like you're qualified. Ozza let out a shaky breath. He made it sound so simple. I can't pay you, he continued, but you and your kids will have food, a safe place to sleep, and a job. That's a fair deal, yeah. Ozza bit her lip. It's more than fair. Roan's expression softened. Then let's start there. Ozza looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. The day passed in a blur of work. Roan showed Ozza how to sterilize instruments, organize medical supplies, and assist with the simpler tasks. She wasn't a healer, but she could hold a hand, could offer words of comfort to the wounded and afraid. She learned quickly. Roan worked with an effortless confidence, his movements quick yet precise. He had a way of speaking to people that put them at ease, even as he stitched wounds or set broken bones. His patients trusted him. And so, slowly did Ozza. Late in the afternoon, she was organizing bandages when Roan approached her with a bottle of antiseptic. Here, he said. You should know how to clean wounds properly. Ozza hesitated, watching as he unwrapped the bandage from his forearm. A deep gash ran along his skin, scabbed but irritated. You should have treated this earlier, she scolded without thinking. Roan chuckled. Didn't have time. And no one else I trust to do it. Her fingers twitched. Trust. The word sent a strange warmth through her. She took a breath and reached for the antiseptic. Hold still. He did. Ozza's hands were steady as she cleaned the wound. Roan didn't flinch, but she could feel the tension in his muscles. He was close, the heat of his skin radiating under her fingertip. She finished quickly, securing a fresh bandage around his arm. There. Roan flexed his fingers. Not bad. Ozza smirked. I learn fast. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, unreadable. Then, he smiled. Yeah, he said softly. You do. Ozza felt her pulse quicken. She turned away, busying herself with supplies. What about you? She asked. How did a human end up here? Roan leaned against the counter. Volunteered. Ozza frowned. Your people don't even live on this planet. He shrugged. Doesn't mean we don't care. Ozza didn't understand. No other species had come to help. Not even the Valkyans who had escaped before the war. Yet this human, who had no connection to her people, had chosen to be here. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Roan's expression grew serious. Because someone has to. Ozza swallowed. No one had ever spoken like that before. Not her people. Not the refugees. Not the warriors who had once protected their home. She looked at Roan, at the quiet strength in his stance, the certainty in his eyes. And for the first time, she wondered if humans were something far greater than she had ever been told. Days turned into weeks, and Ozza found herself settling into a rhythm she had never thought possible. Every morning, she woke to the scent of warm food, to Sia and Vel giggling as they played just outside the tent. She worked alongside Roan, learning more each day. Her hands became skilled at wrapping wounds, her voice steady when she comforted the frightened and the sick. The other refugees, once cold and dismissive, began to see her differently. She wasn't just a struggling mother anymore. She was someone who could help. And Roan. She had never met anyone like him. He was patient but firm, teasing but kind. He treated her like an equal, not someone to be pitied or discarded. He was good with her children too. Sia, once so shy, had taken to him immediately. Vel, ever cautious, had taken longer to warm up, but Ozza had seen the way her son watched Roan, studying him, learning from him. He admired Roan. And Ozza realized with a pang, so did she. One evening, after the last of the patients had been treated, Ozza found herself alone with Roan outside the medical tent. The air was cool, the stars bright above them. Roan sat on an overturned supply crate, stretching his sore muscles. You did good today, he said. Ozza smirked, sitting beside him. I always do good. He chuckled. Can't argue with that. A comfortable silence settled between them. Ozza glanced at him from the corner of her eye. He had removed his jacket, leaving only a simple undershirt that clung to his form. His skin was tanned from long hours under the sun, the faint scars along his arms telling silent stories of battles fought and wounds earned. She had always thought humans looked strange, too soft, too fragile. But Roan was neither of those things. He was strong, but not in the way the Valkyrian males had been. Their strength had been about dominance, about proving themselves. Roan's strength came from something else entirely. Something warmer. Something she wasn't sure she had ever known before. What? Roan's voice broke through her thoughts. Azza blinked. What? He smirked. You're staring. Heat crept up her neck. She looked away quickly. I was just thinking. Roan leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. About. Azza hesitated. You confuse me. Roan raised a brow. That so? She nodded. You're different. He tilted his head. From everyone, she admitted. My people, they abandoned me. Even before the war. I was nothing to them the moment I became a mother without a mate. But you don't see me like that. Roan was quiet for a moment. Then, he let out a slow breath. That's because it's bullshit. Azza blinked. What? He shook his head. The way they treated you. The way they treat single mothers like they're some kind of burden. It's bullshit. She stared at him, heart pounding. You really believe that? He turned to her, his brown eyes dark and serious. Of course I do. Azza swallowed hard. She had spent so many years convincing herself she was worth less, that she was unworthy of kindness. But here was this human, looking at her like she was something more. She lowered her gaze, her fingers twisting in her lap. You're the only one who's ever said that. Roan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Then everyone else is an idiot. Azza let out a breathless laugh. You say things so easily. He grinned. I don't see the point in making things complicated. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Roan watched her for a long moment, his usual teasing expression softening into something quieter, something that made Azza's pulse quicken. I see you, Azza, he said, his voice lower, rougher. Not just as a mother. Not just as someone struggling to survive. I see you. Her breath caught in her throat. The space between them felt smaller than before, the cool night air charged with something electric. Azza had been alone for so long, had built walls around herself to survive. But now, sitting beside this human who had given her a chance when no one else would, she realized she didn't want to be alone anymore. Not with him. The days blurred together in a way Azza had never experienced before, not in exhaustion, not in endless struggle, but in something she hesitated to call happiness. She had a place here. She had a purpose. Sia and Vel laughed more now. Their bellies were full, their bodies warm at night. They played with other children, no longer treated as outcasts. The other refugees saw her differently too. Where once they had turned their backs, now they greeted her in passing, asked for her help without hesitation. And Roan was always there, guiding her, teaching her, watching her with that quiet, steady gaze that made her chest ache in ways she didn't understand. She understood now why Vel admired him. How could he not? Roan was everything the Valkyrian males had failed to be. Strong, but gentle. Capable, but never cruel. He had saved her family, not just with shelter and food, but with kindness. And Azza was terrified of what that meant. One evening, as she sat outside the medical tent, watching the sky fade from deep blue to a soft, dusky violet, Roan approached with 2 steaming cups in his hands. Here, he said, handing her one. She took it, surprised by the warmth that seeped into her fingers. What is it? Roan smirked. A human drink. Tea. Azza lifted the cup to her lips, inhaling the strange, earthy scent before taking a careful sip. It was bitter, but not unpleasant. She raised a brow. Humans drink this? Roan chuckled. Some of us. It's supposed to be relaxing. Azza huffed. I think I prefer the rations. He grinned, leaning against the supply crate beside her. Figures. A comfortable silence settled between them. The stars were bright tonight, scattering across the sky in a way that made Azza's chest tighten. She had never thought she would survive long enough to see her children safe. And yet, here they were. She glanced at Roan. I never asked why you came here. Roan exhaled, swirling the tea in his cup. Guess I've always been drawn to places that need help. Ozza frowned. You left your home for this? He nodded. Yeah. She studied him carefully. Most wouldn't. Roan shrugged. Most don't see things the way I do. Ozza hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cup. And how do you see things? Roan turned his head, meeting her gaze. I think the universe is full of people who need second chances. I think kindness matters. And I think, he said, voice lowering, that you deserve more than what you were given. Ozza's breath hitched. She looked away, her heart hammering. I don't know how to accept that, she admitted. Roan was quiet for a long moment. Then, gently, he said, You don't have to. Not yet. Ozza swallowed. Her fingers brushed his, barely there, but the warmth of his skin sent a shiver up her arm. She had spent so many years believing no one would ever look at her and see something more than a burden. And yet, here was this human, proving her wrong. She let out a slow breath. For the first time in a long time, she thought, maybe she could believe in something again. Maybe she could believe in him.